Hello, KHBC family. This is Pastor Mac. I have a devotional for you today, and I'm excited to share this devotional with you. It is from a book that I've been reading. It's called God, Greed, and the Prosperity Gospel. This is a book that I picked up recently at the Shepherds Conference out in California. I was blessed to be able to go to this conference with a few other members of our church, Josh Munier, Chris McIntyre, Joe Boulanger, and Jason Cook Kinsey. It was a wonderful, excellent time. I was just so blessed to be able to be there and pick up a number of books. This is one that immediately caught my eye, God, Greed, and the Prosperity Gospel, partly because of the author. The author's name is Costi Hinn. The last name Hinn is spelled Hinn. And if you've heard some about the Prosperity Gospel, you may recognize that last name as the name of an infamous Prosperity Gospel preacher named Benny Hinn. And Benny Hinn is a famous prosperity preacher who unfortunately circulates on TV and on TBN and has hosted meetings, faith healing meetings all over the world that unfortunately, they draw millions of people, sometimes in the poorest third world countries, in Nigeria and Ethiopia and India, other places like that, where millions of people come. And Benny Hinn, he has a net worth of millions of dollars. I just looked it up this morning and it was $70 million. So he's going to these faith healing services, telling people to plant a seed of faith and to give whatever money they have to his ministry, promising them that if they do that, that's faith, and God will reward that with prosperity and material wealth and physical healing. And meanwhile, Benny Hinn is living like a millionaire, where these poor, sometimes third world people are giving all they have to his ministry. It's a terrible false gospel. But Costi Hinn is the nephew of Benny Hinn, and Costi Hinn has actually come to faith, the true saving faith, although he grew up in the prosperity gospel movement. His father was a brother of Benny Hinn, who was a prosperity preacher himself. And Costi Hinn actually worked in Benny Hinn's ministry for a number of years. So this is a fascinating read, to read about someone who grew up with prosperity theology, learning it, and then eventually came to saving faith. I just could not put this book down. I would very highly recommend it, even if you're not interested in finding out more about the prosperity gospel. It's really powerful. And I want to share just one, although I learned many things from this book, one thing that stood out the most. I had to pick out one thing, and I would say it's this. Our picture of God, our theology, and this is the scary thing, whether it's a right picture of God or a wrong picture of God, is a much deeper part of ourselves than we often realize. Our picture of God is a much deeper part of ourselves than we often realize. It's ingrained deeply into us. It affects how we see the world, how we see people, how we pray, how we live our daily lives. And in the case of Costi Hinn, it was a false gospel. It was a wrong theology, and it was ingrained into him, partly just because of our sinful human nature, but partly because he grew up in prosperity theology and heard it from his uncle, from his father, from a very young age. So he was taking in this wrong view of God, this prosperity theology. And so when he did hear the true gospel, he had to hear it for a number of years before he finally untangled the true gospel and had true saving faith from all this messed up theology and this baggage that he was carrying just from years of growing up within it. And we know that God can save anyone in an instant, and that saving faith is instantaneous and conversion is instantaneous, and God can remove the scales that blind us to the true gospel in an instant. But in the case of Costi Hinn, it took years of him hearing the true gospel and having to wrestle with his view of God before he finally got it. And that just reminds me that it's the same for all of us, that our view of God is very deep within ourselves. And for our case, hopefully it's the true gospel, and hopefully we are shaping our theology through the Bible, through the true gospel, and we would not want a wrong view of God to creep in and to sink deep within ourselves, like unfortunately the prosperity gospel does with so many people. So it was a good reminder to me to ask myself, where am I getting my view of God? Is it truly from the Bible? Is it is my view of God coming from what God says about himself, or from what my sinful flesh is thinking, what my idol making heart is thinking, or some arbitrary thing that some false preacher or someone else said about God? So where are we getting our view of God? I would love to share more about what I've been learning from this book, but I don't have time. I would very, very highly recommend it if you can get your hands on a copy. And I would love to lend my copy to someone. It's called God, Creed, and the Prosperity Gospel. Thank you, and I hope you have a great day.